Major explosions were reported after the U.S. carried out strikes early on Tuesday targeting Isfahan, which hosts major Iranian military bases and a nuclear facility.
The US and Israel have damaged 132 cultural heritage sites in Iran, a local UNESCO official said.
Syrian interim President Ahmed al-Shara met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss the war in Iran in his first visit to London.
A delegation of European foreign ministers with the EU's High Representative Kaja Kallas marked the 4th anniversary of the atrocities in Bucha.
A massive fireball was seen rising over the Iranian city of Isfahan following U.S. attacks earlier on Tuesday. The central city is home to major Iranian military bases, as well as the nuclear facility which the U.S. previously bombed in June. The attacks come despite Washington's pledge to scale down strikes to allow for talks aimed at ending the war to take place. Tehran says the U.S.'s demands are unrealistic and unacceptable, and added that it's not involved in Pakistan-led efforts.
مطالبی که به ما منتقل شده، حالا تحت هر عنوانی که شما بخواید اسمشو ببرید، 15 بندی یا کمتر و بیشتر، درخواستایی بسیار زیاده خواهانه و غیر واقع بینانه و غیر منطقی بوده. نشستایی که پاکستان با کشورهای همسایه داره، خب چارچوبی است که خودشون تأسیس کردن. ما در این
Meanwhile, Iranian attacks are continuing to strike deep inside Israel, with strikes on central areas injuring several people. These retaliatory attacks are also targeting Gulf Arab neighbors, with authorities in the UAE announcing on Tuesday that they had intercepted aerial threats over Dubai. The price of oil continues to soar, with Brent crude, the international standard, spiking to around $113 a barrel as Iran maintains its stronghold over the Strait of Hormuz. Constraints on oil exports via the waterway, where 20% of the world's oil typically passes, have caused the price of oil to increase by roughly 70% compared to pre-war figures.
The United States and Israel have struck at least 132 cultural and historical sites in Iran, according to an Iranian UNESCO official. Numerous palaces and a mosque have been damaged.
اینکه هزینه‌ها چقدر اصلا نمیشه گفت. اولا ببین چه اینها پرایسلس به تعبیری، اینها غیر قابل جبرانن. چجوری میشه اینها رو تعبیر؟
Fatoussi accused the United States and Israel of intentionally targeting the sites, stressing they possess advanced technologies enabling them to know what they are hitting. UNESCO said it provided all parties to the conflict with the coordinates of the heritage sites ahead of time to avoid damage.
بی‌دفاع‌تر از میراث فرهنگی و میراث طبیعی که نیست. به نظرم در یک جمله هدف قرار دادن میراث فرهنگی، هدف قرار دادن هویت انسانیه. اگر دغدغه انسان داریم، لازمه که حرمت میراث فرهنگی رو نگه داریم.
Iranian officials requested the United Nations Cultural Agency earlier this month to add more sites to its enhanced protection list.
Oil prices climbed higher by early Tuesday afternoon in Europe, with the Euro Stoxx 50 jumping almost 1%, as investors remained wary over U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to destroy Iran's key oil export hub and desalination plants unless it accepts a deal. The climb followed a slight drop Tuesday morning, even as both major oil benchmarks, West Texas Intermediate and Brent crude, remained well above $100 a barrel. As for Asia, Japan's Nikkei 225 was up 0.6%, South Korea's Kospi fell over 4%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng traded flat, and the Shanghai Composite Index was down 0.8%. The latest declines in markets come as governments around the world scramble to implement measures to ease the burden of surging fuel prices as Iran continues to blockade around 1/5 of global crude oil and gas passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
occupation of our territory.
Lebanon's Justice Minister Adel Nasser has called on the international community to condemn Israel's occupation of Lebanese territory in an interview with Euronews program Europe Today. Nasser acknowledged Lebanon faces both internal and external risks, referring to both Hezbollah and Israel, and described the situation as dramatic.
In one hand, there are the Israeli attacks, and on the other hand, there is Hezbollah undermining the state. We are aware that practically, in order to be able to conduct efficient negotiations, we have to hold the decision of war and peace and not to have a parallel organization undermining the state. On the other hand, it is also obvious that we cannot accept that our territory be used as a target by Israel the way Lebanon is being targeted.
Nasser's comments follow Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's order on Sunday to expand a military operation along Israel's northern border. Lebanese authorities warn the move could see additional land seized, describing it as an invasion and occupation of their territory. Earlier this month, Lebanon banned Hezbollah's military operations as tensions escalated. Nasser said his government has been clear that it rejects the use of Lebanese territory as a launchpad for Iran or its proxies against Israel. Nasser also urged Israel to respond to Lebanese president's call for negotiations, warning that further incursions could have a dramatic impact on the civilian population already at risk of displacement and malnutrition.
Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara has made his first trip to London since the fall of longtime leader Bashar al-Assad, where he met with Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss the war in Iran. His visit comes after London announced the resumption of diplomatic relations with Syria last year. The leaders discussed the need for a viable plan to reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively closed since the beginning of the war, causing global oil prices to dramatically spike. They also spoke about ongoing hostilities in Syria and al-Shara's plans to address them. Since al-Shara has been in power, sectarian clashes have continued to cause repeated bloodshed in the country, and the so-called Islamic State terror group remains at large. Starmer welcomed the government's efforts at countering the violence and terrorism, noting that much progress has been observed. The British Premier also urged closer cooperation with Damascus on the return of illegal migrants, border security, and tackling smuggling networks. Between 2011 and 2021, over 30,000 Syrian nationals were granted asylum in the UK after the civil war sparked a refugee crisis.
A delegation of 12 European foreign ministers and the EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, have arrived in Kiev to mark the 4th anniversary of the atrocities in Bucha. The visit to the town where more than 400 bodies were discovered following the end of a month-long Russian occupation in 2022 serves as a grim reminder of the war crimes documented by the United Nations. While 26 member states pledged full accountability for the victims on Tuesday, the EU remains divided internally as Hungary did not sign the joint statement and continues to block a vital €90 billion loan for Kiev. The anniversary falls at a critical time for Ukraine, with the International Committee's attention gripped by the escalating conflict in the Middle East. EU officials warned that the continent's biggest land war must not be forgotten. Kaja Kallas emphasized that accountability is an indispensable element of a lasting peace, even as US-mediated negotiations remain stalled. The EU will continue to provide military, financial, energy and humanitarian support, Kallas said in an earlier post on X.
C'est la Gestapo, vous êtes juif, on vient vous arrêter.
Sharing her story so we never forget, Ginette Kolinka is one of the last Holocaust survivors in France. And despite the passing years, she continues to tell her story, sometimes several times a week, to audiences of all ages. From her arrest by the Gestapo at age 19, along with her father, brother and nephew in March 1944, to her long month spent in the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp.
On exige de nous la nudité totale. Il faut enlever les culottes. La haine des nazis envers les Juifs était telle qu'ils ont été chercher tous les détails qui pouvaient nous faire souffrir.
Ginette Kolinka was long reluctant to tell her story. It took a request from an association of former deportees and the persistent calls of an investigator from the Holocaust Foundation, a vast project to collect testimonies launched by American filmmaker Steven Spielberg in the early 2000s for her to commit to serving as an ambassador for Holocaust remembrance. Today, she focuses her efforts on speaking in schools to pass on her story to younger generations.
Alors naturellement, on a dû me poser des questions. Et ce que je me rappelle, c'est la réponse que je faisais. Si ça devait arriver, encore une fois, j'espère que jamais, 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 eh bien, et que j'avais un enfant, eh bien, je préférerais l'étrangler de mes propres mains que de le faire subir ce que j'ai subi. Pour moi, c'était une réponse qui voulait tout dire.
A powerful testimony followed by open discussions. The students are captivated.
C'est une femme formidable. C'est formidable de l'avoir en face de nous. Cette force de témoignage, cette force mentale en fait qu'elle a d'être devant nous, d'être devant une salle pleine d'élèves et puis on est tous hyper intéressés. C'est une joie pour nous d'être là. Je pense vraiment que cette femme est extraordinaire. On trouve le même mot pour la décrire. C'est magique d'entendre ça. C'est triste.
For her tireless commitment to passing on history, Ginette Kolinka was named Commander of the Order of Arts and Letters in 2024. Now over 101 years old, she says she wants to continue her visits to schools for as long as she can to pass on her message of tolerance to the younger generation.